And we are breaking the Buckeyes and college football down with Adam King, Nicole Shearin, and our man Tim May, 97.1 The Fan, and the Tim May Show. Tim, what do you think? And we're going to put a wrap on the 2025 season, but last time we saw the Buckeyes in action, of course, was against Miami. What do you think Ryan Day would do differently if he could go back in time when it comes to that game?
Well, he might have put himself at one of the positions himself if he had any eligibility left on the offensive line, because that was clearly the Achilles that was found by both Indiana and Miami in terms of giving Julian Sayin more time to throw the ball, not making it so frenetic in front of him, as the old saying goes, looking through a car wash trying to get things done. I think they would have spent more time zeroing in on the offensive line play in a nutshell, because things were there if they could have just protected a little bit better.
One last thing before we move on to Nicole. I've had a lot of people ask, why doesn't Julian run? Do they not want him to run?
Julian can run. Julian was considered a dual-threat quarterback coming out of high school in Carlsbad, California, home state of my friend here. But the bottom line is he even regretted that after the game in the interview session with us guys in the media, that maybe he should have tried to maybe run a little bit more, make a few more things happen with his feet. They're definitely addressing that, I'm sure, in the interim between now and September.
Nicole, I've had so many people ask me what happened, and I've been thinking about it. I watched the game a couple more times. Did this team simply run out of gas? Was this season too long? And last season, when you combine it all?
No, it wasn't too long. That's not ever an excuse, because we look back at last year, and that point of the season when the playoffs started is when Ohio State went on the greatest run in college football history. So, no, it was not a long season. It's long for everybody. The reality is the storyline that we all knew going into this game was Ohio State's offensive line against Miami's defensive front. Miami showed up, nothing to lose, everything to gain. They wanted to be there. They wanted to play. It took Ohio State 2 quarters to figure it out. And, yeah, we could go back to the whole statement of teams with the bye are 1-7. But you know what? That's not an excuse. It took them too long to shake off the cobwebs. They figured it out in the second half, but it was too little, too late, and Miami just absolutely dominated.
Adam, was this team too young? As we look back, were they too young, especially maybe at the quarterback position? Obviously, Julian Sayin's an incredible talent. He's a Heisman finalist. But if you look at modern college football, and Ohio State won it a year ago with a veteran quarterback, you see what's going on in the playoff this year. Were they too young, though, maybe?
I don't know that they were too young. I do think that you have entered a world of college football where a veteran quarterback seems to be the answer to win a national title. And it's been like that really before. You can go all the way back to Tua really being the last young quarterback to ever win a national championship game. Since then, you've had J.J. McCarthy. You've had so many different guys that have led their teams for a long period of time. I don't think that's all to put on Julian Sayin. I think there were a lot of problems in this game. I think the biggest thing that we haven't touched on yet is the slow playing of the offense. And I understand if you go back and look at the game, as you said, you watched it a few times, there were a lot of actually good play calls. Yep. I think Ohio State took advantage of Miami in a lot of ways. They just didn't capitalize on those plays. But the problem is, if you shoot 100 free throws, you're more likely to make 50. If you shoot 50 free throws, it's a lot harder to make 50. And so really slow playing that game, only having 3 offensive possessions in the second half, that changed everything.
Following up on that, Tim May, and Ryan Day always says every play is designed to score a touchdown.
So did Newt Rockne, by the way.
Yeah, you got to execute. What did Ryan Day learn this season, and what kind of changes do you think? Because he's a guy that will evaluate everything. He's looking at it. If I've watched the game 2 times, he's watched it 250 times. What did he learn? What will he change?
I think coming out immediately, I think he thought they did a pretty good job of keeping his team, for the most part, healthy through the season, with a few glaring examples of the other way. But the bottom line is, I think they felt like they had a really good plan going into it, extrapolating on what they did the year before and then building on that. But you still got to, and when you get in the game, you still got to make plays. The main thing you have to do, and Nicole hit on it a minute ago, your offensive line has got to play extremely well. And what happened with Ohio State, for example, in the Miami game was just like the Indiana game. They'd get a good play, like the opening deep pass to Jeremiah Smith. 2 plays later, pick 6. But that wasn't really on Julian Sayin. That was basically a running play to the wide side, which that obviously Miami and company had targeted, hey, if they show this, we're doing this. We're going to take our shot.
Yeah.
And boy, did it pay off for them.
The thing that's hard to talk about with that play is really Jeremiah Smith obviously had an unbelievable game.
Right.
But if he makes that block, then that play works as it has all season, all of Ryan Day's tenure, really.
But that's why Tim May hates that play, by the way. Is I've been waiting for people to jump that forever. My point is, they still got back into the game 17-14. Then they couldn't make the plays on offense, and they couldn't make the plays on defense to get off the field when they needed to get off the field. So it's a little bit on both sides of it, even in the Indiana game and the Miami game, of what could have been better. But it's really spilt milk. The idea of playing faster, I agree with that, especially against a front like Miami had. You want to try to wear those guys out if you can, but you still have to make consecutive plays. That's where they fell short.
And with the offensive line, they did make the changes there, in the second half. Not only, actually with scheme, but
Padilla
also
played a good game.
with personnel, which I think mattered in a major way. If they had made that change a little earlier,
that's what I
understand that you're trying to give the guys the opportunity.
Yes.
But at some point, you've got to realize you're playing for your season, and it's time. Anything, throw the kitchen sink.
You can't wait that long. No. That was my big question: is why did it take 2 quarters to figure it out? You can't wait that long.
Nicole, we did see tempo in that third quarter, and I thought we were going to see it the rest of the game, but I don't know.
Well, they only had, one other possession that mattered.
Yeah.
They had 3 possessions in the second half.
If you don't make a first down,
if you don't make a first down, to the 50-yard line.
They looked like a totally different team.
Yeah.
We could debate this for hours. They can't replay it, but they can learn from it.
Nicole, who's going to call the plays next season, and should it be Ryan Day?
No, it should not be Ryan Day. Like Adam just said, there were some great calls in those games, Indiana and Miami. But the reality is, Ryan Day should not be the one calling plays because the head coach has a lot of other things he needs to deal with. Ryan Day should be kind of a CEO, GM, manager. Yes, he has the offensive mind. He was an incredible quarterback, but he also needs to have an imprint on the defense. But if a guy like Matt Patricia stays, obviously that's taken care of. But no, take the play calling off of Ryan Day. And the reason I say that is because yes, all season long, Brian Hartline was the one calling plays, but as we know, Ryan Day had a major impact on that as well. But when you look at Indiana and Miami, especially Miami, when all of that was on Ryan Day, Indiana and Miami were the 2 worst offensive performances from Ohio State this season. And I'm not saying that it was a terrible called game, because it wasn't. But it didn't work. So they need that is not the answer.
You can't have Ryan Day, and I made big eyes when you asked that question because I think Ryan Day doesn't want to call the play.
He doesn't want that, no.
You can't have Ryan Day. There's nothing that lingers with me more in that Miami game than Ryan Day looking at an iPad after, I think it was the pick 6, the defense is out on the field, and that's what he had to do because he's calling the plays. I can't stand it. You've got to get an offensive guru.
All right, that's for you. Who does he bring in? Who would you like to see him bring in? And who do you get rid of? Because you got 10 on the staff now.
Adam.
Who do you get rid of, Adam?
Who do you get rid of is a great question. I do think there is a clear answer out there. And I use Brian Daboll as a kind of
example.
Example. It's a good way to put it, Tim. Like, do I think Brian Daboll is going to come to Ohio State? I don't know. Do I think it's a possibility? Absolutely. I think there are a lot of NFL guys. The one thing that jumps out with Brian Daboll more than his offensive mindset is his ability to connect with players. If you watched his tenure with the New York Giants, the team loved him. That's what's allowed Matt Patricia to be so successful on defense. Not just the fact that he has an amazing mind, but his ability to connect with young men has changed the mindset in that locker room in a lot of ways. You notice everybody that says thank you so much for their time at Ohio State. There's not a lot of mentions of Jim Knowles. There's a million mentions of Matt Patricia. So you have to find that guy on offense. A lot of people talk about Cliff Kingsbury. I don't think that works. Cliff Kingsbury comes in with a very, I'll say this, he seems like a nice guy, but he's got an ego. He's got a coaching ego.
His offense.
Yes, it's
That's
right.
not what Ryan Day wants.
You have to find someone that's going to come in. I give Chip Kelly credit. I think I asked him 100 times about the Chip Kelly offense, and every time he corrected me and said the Ohio State offense. You have to have someone that comes in with that mindset. Who goes? I'm really glad that that's not on my radar. I am not paid $11 million to make that decision.
And I got news for you. You may think Ryan Day may not want to call the plays, but I've not heard him say that. And
Well, he said it after the Missouri game 2 years ago, Don.
Yeah, well, that was 2 years ago. But as we all know, he's got headset on, and he's going to be involved.
Well, no, he's going to be involved.
For sure he's going to be involved.
Nobody said that. He's got veto power. He's got the ultimate veto power.
I will say real quick.
But like you're talking about, Brian Daboll, I've only met one time. I had a brief little conversation with this guy. He's a genuinely engaging, nice guy. I mean, too bad things didn't go right with him with New York Giants. But the example that he brings is not only that kind of personality, but also the fact he's been in the NFL. it makes you even more attractive as a program when you've got, the pixie dust that Matt Patricia sprinkled on the defense. You can do the same thing with the offense. The great thing about Chip Kelly is they wanted the running game fixed, and for 1 year the running game got fixed. Coinky-dink that Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins were there also, but the running game got fixed. This past year, it never really got to where you wanted it to. So there will be an emphasis on the run game with whoever they bring.
All right, last couple things. Last 2 years, college football playoff, 8 teams got byes. They're 1-7. As we stand here now, do they make changes? Does that need to change?
I had Ross Bjork on my podcast earlier this week and brought that up. And, the number he'd like to see is 16, number one, to be in the college football playoff. We'll see if it gets to that number. But number two, the bye, the only way you get rid of the bye is to get rid of the conference championship games. Because
that's going away.
That's putting a lot of players. Already there are players in a lot of jeopardy.
I've been screaming it, and you were defending it. It needs to go away.
No, I just said I've always been for the idea of players being in less jeopardy as the thing goes on. The problem with the conference championship game is if you lose it, then you're playing 5 games.
Yeah.
If you win it, you're only playing 4, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
But they've got to get to that. I don't know why college football people can't get together and figure stuff out. What do you think, Adam?
They got a lot to figure out.
All right, last thing. Can this team simply reload? Are they a playoff team next year? Tim?
I like a lot of the experience that's coming back on the offensive line. They still have to address. That's where they have to address more than anything else. If they can get a player or two out of the portal, which would help them immediately. But we saw it was hit or miss last year. Phillip Daniels hit. Ethan Anianwa miss.
Is that a yes or no?
Yeah, they can be they can be a champion. They got talent.
Absolutely.
I thought that was rhetorical.
Listen, the reality is they've got a guy in Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith coming back, Brandon Inniss is coming back. I think the major question mark is the defense. They're losing a lot of defensive talent. But we were saying this exact same thing last season, that they were losing a lot of defensive talent, and they absolutely
So, yes,
reloaded.
they're back, playoff team?
Yes, they are.
Dom, I'll make you a deal. I'll write you a check and I'll sign it for $100 that Ohio State will be a playoff team for the next 5 years. I don't have to know what the roster looks
Right.
like.
Especially
They're gonna
if it
have 16
expands.
teams.
Yeah,
they're going to be a playoff team. They do have a lot. We're going to dive into a transfer portal in a different discussion here, but they have the world of college football has changed, and what this Buckeye team is going to look like next season and moving forward is going to be completely different than anything we've seen in the last 20 years of Ohio State.
Well, it's unanimous because I think they're going to be if they're
Bold
not
take.
a playoff team, there's going to be issues. Anyways,
right.
Keep it on 10 TV, 10 TV Plus, and 97.1 The Fan for the best Buckeye coverage there is.